Well, good evening, South Mississippi. Going to be doing some updates for you as Hurricane Sally continues to close in, because this is going to be a long event and there are still a lot of developing situations involved and variables. Now, what's interesting is the further east the storm pushes, and we're going to continue to talk about the details of the track as we go through this update here, which will take just about 10 minutes, and then we'll do another as we head into about the 8 o'clock hour. So, what's been going on? We all know the hurricane has been pushing towards us. We're continuing to see it push towards the east. It once started far west of us and is now pretty far east of us, pushing into Mobile Bay. And as it does so, things are improving for South Mississippi. We're still seeing, obviously, the low clouds. We're still getting the gusty winds. We're still seeing the rain moving through from time to time. But you can also kind of still see a little bit of blue as you look way off towards the southwest, away from where this storm is moving in, where there is some drier air. So things are looking better, but they're still not safe, would be the good way to put it, because we still have some dangerous things going on, and we'll get into those details now. So we're looking at winds still coming in out of the north, and that is currently helping, at least for the moment, our storm surge issues, pushing that water away, even though it is continuing to try to push in. We're also headed towards low tide right now, but when we start heading closer towards landfall, it will be closer to high tide, so that will boost those numbers just a bit. Still not looking anything like what we saw with Laura or anything overtly dangerous. But if you live on the coastline, I'll show you a little bit later, any sort of increase in that sea level can cause its own problems. So as we look at Sally here, it hasn't moved much. It's actually weakened a bit today. It was a Category 2 storm, expected to just barely miss Category 3 status, now dropping to a Category 1, and is expected to either weaken or remain there as it continues to push for about the next 12 hours towards, seemingly at least, if the eastward trend continues towards the Alabama-Florida line. We are still going to get rain, but as you can see, if you were to put an imaginary line right through this storm, most of the activity is off towards the north and the east, and we're still seeing just this little half here that's going to kind of swirl around, giving us our activity. So those rainfall totals, especially for my viewers off on the western end, even into Harrison County, as we continue to see this inching eastward, may be falling down to negligible levels, trace amounts of rainfall, but we're still looking at something significant happening off towards the east, which is, of course, why I mentioned earlier that this may not all be relevant to you. If you live over here right on the Harrison-Hancock County line, you're not going to see the same effects that I'm talking about, the dangerous storm surge and the high winds off towards Pascagoula. So we just want to make everyone clear that this is very interestingly a very sharp line right near the state line as to where we have a significant threat as far as winds and rain and storm surge, as a much less so off towards the west, but still those things are there. So as we zoom in here, the track, which at one point began really out of frame, it was kind of right along where this border is on Sunday evening. Then it started to inch its way towards the east, and we're all the way into Mobile Bay. And I mentioned if this trend continues, we can see that continuing to push towards the state line here. So expected to make landfall right around the early morning hours. I would say now 8 a.m. tomorrow, at least for this area here. Then it's got to push through the bay, so I'm not sure if we'll count it here or they'll count it here as the official landfall. I'm going to look up that for some clarity later, just for my own sake. But then it pushes far off towards the east, and that's why things will start improving rapidly for us later on into Wednesday. But it's still such a slow-moving storm that it's just creeping towards us here. So winds have been going up throughout the day. They fluctuated a bit, especially right here in the middle. Gulfport at 18, Biloxi at 20. I saw 25 here in Gulfport earlier. These are your sustained winds, and they've been shaking the studio here pretty well throughout the entire afternoon and evening so far. So it's something we're going to continue to see as these numbers go up. Almost a tropical storm force there in Ocean Springs, and getting there in Pascagoula, already beyond that in Mobile. Gusts are, of course, a little bit higher. We're seeing Mobile now nearing hurricane force strength winds there. We're just now starting to get, at least on the eastern edge, beyond those tropical storm force winds. You see Grand Bay at 40, Pascagoula 38, Biloxi right there at the threshold. Will be there very soon. It feels like it has been there already many times. But here's the positive aspects that I'm talking about. And And again, I mentioned that off towards the west, you're getting a very different situation than our friends on the east here in Jackson and George County. Pearl River and Hancock weakening rapidly as far as the danger goes. So yesterday, Hancock County in particular was a hurricane warning. That's been now downgraded to tropical storm warning. Pearl River had a tropical storm warning that has since dropped off, and we are seeing, starting to see that kind of creeping in this direction. So it wouldn't surprise me if Harrison County, with the next few updates, again, we only have 12 hours, we're kind of up against the clock, if this red started slowly shifting eastward too, giving us more a tropical storm issue than a hurricane issue. So it's something we're continuing to watch. We also still have storm surge, which is going to be an issue, but has diminished from where it started. Yesterday, I believe we were looking at the very beginning of my evening shift, 9 to 11 feet of storm surge in about this area. Now that is down to 2 to 4, and I expect at least that we'll be seeing the lower end of this off in this area as we'll be getting that wraparound northerly wind. So we are still coming in on high tide, which will help the storm surge, but we're generally looking at about an average of about 3 feet for the South Mississippi area. Well, what does that mean for you? Well, let's assume this is your house, and I hope not, considering what we're about to do to it. And as we back up, you can see where that sea level is, your normal sea level, where that surge line is, and where your wind direction is. Now, again, our winds are actually pushing away the water out the opposite direction. So this would be what's happening on the east side of the storm. So let's up that to about 3 feet, which is what we're looking at seeing here. You don't see too many issues, but of course any roadways here, any decorations you have for your home, any pool houses or piers or anything like that, completely under with a 3 foot there, and that can of course cause problems. We saw that with the last storm that moved through earlier in the season, which did damage some piers but didn't do too much more than that. Now let's up that to about 6 feet, which is what we're going to see closer to the Mobile into Florida area. Now you're starting to see that getting upwards in the house, and it only takes, as any homeowner knows that's been in the Gulf Coast for a while and has dealt with hurricanes, it only takes a few inches of water to get in there, to get into that sheetrock, to get in to the floors, of course, and really cause problems, and then the mold grows from there. So then you really have problems on top of that. So even though we're only looking at 2 to 4 feet in our area and a little bit more than that off towards the east as the storm is weakened, it's still a damaging and potentially dangerous situation. And if you get caught on the beach with 6-foot storm surge coming in, that can really cause some problems very quickly for you. So looking here, storm surge, obviously one of our main issues we've been talking about. Flash flooding, also the other, but even those warnings have begun to drop off. We now have Pearl River and Hancock out of the flash flood watch. As we head into the next few days, rainfall totals were yesterday, Pascagoula in particular, was over a foot. Now we're running it through the same time period, and you're only getting just under 2 inches there. Mobile, of course, a little bit higher than that, but even yesterday, Mobile was upwards of 15 inches as far as that rainfall estimate goes, and now that's down to less than 4. So as this continues to shift east, the bulk of the rain is on that eastern side. So now if it's hitting Mobile Bay, well, now all of that's here instead of being on Pascagoula and Mobile. So it's still developing, and it's not to say that it can't inch a little bit back towards the west. It just doesn't look like the way things are going and the way the storm is developing that is very likely to happen. So it's also picking up on that on different models. The European tends to be very good for tropical systems and tends to be pretty good for rainfall totals. You see Pascagoula just under 2 inches there, Mobile at just under 4, so a little bit higher on that regard. And I believe this one is the GFS model, which is a global forecasting system. That one, very similar, just under 4 for Mobile, Gulfport just under a half an inch, and you're seeing now Pensacola jumping up over a foot. So certainly some issues going to be had there. But Sally obviously is the main issue that we'll be dealing with for the rest of the night and into tomorrow, but there are many other areas still out there. We have 2 new disturbances we're looking at, 70% chance by the end of the week as this one continues to make its way across the Atlantic. We have another with a 10 to 20% chance as we head through the rest of the week. Watching that one up near Spain, not very likely to do anything. Teddy is forecast now to become a major hurricane as we head through the middle and end of the week, making a northwest straight line almost, it seems like. So we'll see if that curves, or it may even cause some East Coast issues. Paulette is still making it as a hurricane, but will eventually weaken pretty quickly and move south as a remnant. And then we have Vicky. So 4 named storms right now and 3 active disturbances in the Atlantic. This one not expected to last too long. So we are in for a stormy night and a rainy day, but as we head into the next few days and into next week, it gets a little bit better.